Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Gardening with Wendy in Zone 5B. My name is Janelle and I'm here to help take the intimidation out of gardening. Today's kind of the start of a short video series. It's going to take me a couple days to film it, but I wanted to kind of talk about strawberries. Now, I've had 2 strawberries out of my strawberry patch and there's 2 more that are blushing right now, meaning blushing means that they're pink and they're starting to turn red. So that just means that that strawberry crop is not that much further behind. I do have leftover strawberries from last year. So I want to use these up. I'm going to make some jam ahead of time. And then if something happens out there where I don't have a whole bunch, at least I've used this. Now these were picked last year. They've been in the freezer. And whenever I freeze things, I know like this I think is a pint container, but I do put how many cups there are in here. So in this one here, you can see it's 2 cups. This here is also 2 cups. I don't put any sugar on them because when I'm baking or making jam, sugar gets added at that time. Here's another 2-cup container. Another 2-cup container. Yet another 2-cup container. Oh my, this one is 3 3/4 cup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thaw these out in the refrigerator overnight, and tomorrow evening I'll probably make some jam. I went outside and I picked just a little bit of rhubarb. I still have to wash this and chop it up. So what I'll do when I make my jam is I'll divide out the quantity and I'll add rhubarb to part of it and make rhubarb strawberry jam, and then the rest will be plain. And then when those strawberries come due out in the yard, I'll still have more rhubarb and then I can make some more jam. I also usually make, out of my strawberries, I usually make strawberry lemonade concentrate. I also just can some strawberries whole in water. Then you can drain it and make like a pie filling out of it if you want over winter. I think those are the 2 main things. I do use strawberry to make like a mixed jam, like say strawberry, cherry, blueberry. You know, you can do all sorts of crazy combinations, but that's kind of what I use my strawberries for. So I just wanted to kind of introduce how we're going to go about this. I got to first thaw out what I have, and then tomorrow we'll pull out a recipe book and we'll make some jam together. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. I decided that I'm going to wash and cut up my rhubarb this evening. It's just a little mittful. It's not much. I weighed it. It's 4.2 ounces, so it's not that much. But for a half a batch of jam, it'll be just fine. So I just washed this under cold water, and I'm just kind of drying it because when you're making jam, there's going to be enough liquid within the fruit itself. You don't want to add more liquid and cause maybe your jam to flop. When I say flop, just like it doesn't set. So you just kind of want to keep fruit in their natural state. The other thing too I wanted to show you is if there's any imperfections on the rhubarb, don't use those parts. I know I saw something here that was, oh, right here. So this is what I would call an imperfection. And chances are it's something that rubbed against it, you know, like maybe another stalk was rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and caused this to scab over. It could have been a bug. It could have been a chipmunk, like that. So I'm just not going to use that part, but everything else is just fine. So the way I do this is I just kind of line everything up so that it's nice and, you know, like kind of even like this. And I'm going to just get a knife. Now, since I just harvested this, the ends are nice and green. They're not dried out or anything, so I can use this. So I'm going to just kind of, where's that one? Here, I'm just going to put that one on the end, just so I can kind of keep tabs on that scarred off spot. So all I'm going to do is cut it into pieces about like this size. And it's a liquid measuring cup, but then I can see it. And this is all it is. Prepping rhubarb for 2025. Prepping rhubarb for 2025. There we go. Oh, you don't like my singing? Me either. This one here didn't quite. There we go. It doesn't really matter because when I cook this down, it's going to soften and I'm going to be mushing it up. And then here I just came across that scarred spot. So I'm gonna just not use that. We're gonna continue on with cutting, get that out of the way. Rhubarb makes a really good pie, like a rhubarb meringue pie. Oh, that's so good. And again, I'll just show you about the size of the pieces that I'm cutting. That's all it really is. Rhubarb is a really tart kind of a fruit, but it does really add a second flavor to your jams. Like sometimes you can mix different combinations of fruit and you're like, nah, I barely noticed it. But yeah, now that you say it, I can taste it in there. Rhubarb is one of those things that it doesn't take much and it does kind of add that extra flavor. So now you can see it's really easy to prep rhubarb. Better pay attention to what I'm doing so I don't end up calling for somebody to take me to the hospital because I got a finger on ice. So I cut it off. Oops, there we go. There. I'm just about done. Oh, I just wish I had enough rhubarb to make a rhubarb pie. Rhubarb meringue pie. Oh, that'd be so good. My grandma used to make rhubarb meringue pie and hers was just so good. My mom would make rhubarb pie, and that was good too, but with that meringue on top, it was just really special. So there we go. So I probably did not get, I barely got 1 cup. Better than nothing. So tomorrow will be the second step. I'm going to cover this with some kind of a, I don't want to say plastic because I use, what do you call it, like beeswax cloth. Here, I'll show you. Not that one, I don't want that big. They come like in a little packet like this. I try to keep mine nice. And it's not gonna take a really big one. Where's my smaller one? Oh, my smaller one is downstairs. All right, wait a second, here we go. This is gonna be just fine. So it's called a food wrap. I got these on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. And it's just something, it's beeswax, tree resin, organic cotton. And it's a pack, there's various sizes. This is something that you don't wash per se. You wipe it down with a soapy dish rag, you know, just to get it clean. But yeah, then all you gotta do is kind of do this and shape it. I don't know if I ever used this one because it's kind of like in its original size. But you can kind of see how it's similar to like a plastic wrap. So I'm just gonna stick this in the refrigerator for the night. See you tomorrow. It's the next day. So when we left off yesterday, I just pulled the strawberries out of the freezer and I thawed them out in the refrigerator overnight. Today's recipe I'm going to be using out of this book. It's called Small Batch Preserving, and this is ideal for households with just 1 or 2 people. Now, I preserve a lot of stuff because I gift a lot of stuff, but in the event that I have just a small amount available to me, I can make a small batch. To add on to that, I usually put my things in 1/2 pint or 1/4 pint jars, because if I would make jam or jelly out of and put it into like a pint jar, there's no way I'm going to use that before I get sick of it. So I prefer to put it in smaller jars. I do this with my salsa, applesauces, everything. I use the small jars. And yeah, okay, so I go through more lids. I don't have food waste though. So to me, that outweighs the cost of the lids. The recipe today that I'm following is on page 28. And for those of you, you can see how often I use this. And for those of you who are new to canning, oftentimes when you find your recipe books, they'll give you variations. Like right down here, here's a variation of how to do strawberry rhubarb jam. So the whole recipe up on top here is how to make strawberry jam. But if you want to do strawberry rhubarb jam, it gives you a little tip on how to do that. And you'll find that in a lot of the canning cookbooks. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is the strawberry itself. It's actually a really unique and special kind of a fruit because its seeds are on the outside. And what you think are seeds really aren't seeds. I don't even remember the proper term for it. I think it starts with an E, but I don't remember. So I ran outside and I picked 2 strawberries that are just about ripe, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So you see all those little dots? So those are not the actual seeds. The actual seeds are within those. So they're really, really tiny. So how a strawberry develops is the flower comes here. So at one point, all this green had the flower, and then it slowly starts to produce this fleshy part. And when they're pollinated, then the fleshy part can produce all these little seeds. Now, pollination isn't a problem with strawberries. They're very easy. You know, it's not like, oh, there's no bees, I'm not going to get any strawberries. It's not like that. They produce no problem like this. So I just wanted to show you that you can tell all your friends the seeds are actually within those little dots, which I think starts with an E and I can't remember. But anyway, I just picked these 2 strawberries outside today. The other thing, I'm just going to kind of show you real quick what the supplies are that we're going to use. So I brought up a bunch of large rings. I have way more than this downstairs. And then I brought up a bin of small rings, so you can kind of see the size difference. This will go on quarter pints. This will go on my half pint jars today. And then I have a little tub of like my pectins, citric acid, xanthan gums, all sorts of different things. Ascorbic acid. I ordered this stuff in for making applesauce, mango cane sugar. This is not being sponsored either. And it actually does come from Hawaii. And I make this with my applesauce. It just brings a whole new flavor to it. It's really good. So if you're bold, give it a try for applesauce. But we're not going to use that today. I just wanted to show you that I kind of keep all my supplies there so that when canning season starts, I'm like, oh, do I have pectin? Oh, do I have this? Do I have that? I can just go to this bin and like, oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, it's not expired. Okay. So I just wanted to show you that. The other thing that we're going to use are lids. So we have the larger lids and the smaller lids. For me, either brand is fine by me. This brand here actually seals a little bit louder, so they're kind of fun to use. So you'll see that this ring will fit these lids, and this ring is for these lids. So let's go and take a look what else I got here. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the jars. These here are quarter pint jars, which I will use the small lids and the small rings for. So it's kind of a nice little, like I make a lot of salsa in these, and this, if you just buy those like individual servings of chips, you can use 1 jar of this and 2 of those bags and you have no waste. So I'm going to be using quarter pints, and I'm also going to be using half pints. And remember, some of these jars are probably 10, 15, 20 years old. You can reuse these over and over. You can reuse the rings over and over, but the lids, I don't ever reuse. Some people do, I don't. So I never set myself up for that kind of a gamble, especially when you go through all that work. The other thing here, this is my rack for in my water bath canner. Oh yeah, we're gonna be water bath canning. The recipe calls for, I think, about 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I could sit here and squeeze lemons, but I'm not. I have my jug of vinegar out here, and this is just to add to the water in the water bath canner to keep my jars sparkly. I have hard water here, even though it goes through a water softener. The water has deposits, mineral deposits that can make these jars cloudy, and then you got to kind of wash them off after they're cooled down. I just add a little bit of white vinegar into the water, and the jars stay nice and sparkly. I'm also going to use my funnel for filling my jars and my jar grabber when I take the jars out of the canner. So it works like this. Don't try to use a tongs. They're just going to slip and slide out of there. This is very well worth the money. And then let's come over here. This here is my water bath canner. You can see how full I have it. And yeah, it's a little discolored, but you got to remember, I didn't buy this brand new. This I got from my grandma's house when she passed away, I think, or my mom, or one of my grandmas, I think. So they've used it for a long, long time too. It also has a lid, so when I'm heating the water temperature up, I'll take my jars, I'll put them on the rack, and I put them in the hot water, because what we're going to do is hot packing. We're going to have hot jam going into hot jars into hot water. Yesterday, I showed you that I was thawing out strawberries, and I have the jars or the containers labeled with 2-cup portions. So I dumped these out into my measuring cup just so that you can see, yeah, it is an actual 4 cups. And this recipe does call for 4 cups. So I am going to get those in my stainless steel pot. Now it says to let it sit for 8 hours with some sugar, and that's to kind of draw out the juices. Since they're frozen, I'm going to choose to skip that step. You can follow that step if you want. The jam is going to turn out just fine, but I'm going to choose to skip that step. I have before, and it's just fine. With the frozen strawberries. With fresh strawberries, I wouldn't skip that step, because when these are frozen, they actually soften up more than what their true texture is when they're just off the plant. They're not a firm berry, like you can just pretty much mash these up in your mouth with your tongue. And then yesterday, I chopped up some rhubarb, so that's going to be my rhubarb for my recipe. I was hoping to get a cup because I remember this recipe from last year and how it used a cup. So we are going to get this part started here. All right, let's get going. We're just going to kind of get everything in the kettle here, kind of getting ready to mix. Now, I did show you my pectin collection, but this recipe does not use pectin, and that's because rhubarb has kind of a lot of pectin in. There are some fruits that are naturally high in pectin, like Granny Smith apples, or even like a greener apple, and some people will shave apples into their kettle of whatever they're making for jam, so that releases a natural pectin. I've done that a couple times. I use powdery pectin, where never add powdery pectin into your jam straight away. Measure it out, mix it with some sugar, and then put it in. Otherwise, you're going to just get clumps of pectin, and you got to cook it down and stir it even harder for that pectin to break up. So we're just going to do this. Come on. By the way, whenever I do canning, I do tie my hair back, and I also wipe everything down with like a disinfectant wipe. Let me get a wooden spoon here. Oh, this is a good one. All right, so I'm just going to get these last berries out, put those in there, and we're going to put the rhubarb in there. Oh, that came out all nice. I'm just going to kind of mix it up just so that flavors will mesh together. And now this recipe calls for 2 cups of white sugar. So let me get my container of sugar here and a measuring cup. I just keep my 1/4 cup one in here for when I make nectar for the hummingbirds, because I'm lazy. All right. All right, so here's 1 cup of sugar, 2 cups of sugar. And then we're just gonna stir this up. I'm gonna let this sit just for a little while, just to kind of get the juices moving around. I'm gonna show you what this looks like right now. I got some lumpy sugar here. That's just because I haven't been baking much, so I'm not going through it as fast. So you just kind of want to get your berries coated with the sugar. So this is what it looks like. So this is technically 5 cups of fruit to 2 cups of sugar, and it does sound like a lot, but with this method, since I'm not using pectin, it's important for me to pay attention to the sugar level, because if you don't use pectin, and if you don't use enough sugar, and if your fruit doesn't have pectin, you're going to end up with runny jam. It's important not to cut corners on recipes. Like I just said, oh, I'm not going to let this sit for 8 hours. It's important not to cut corners on jam recipes just because of the pectin levels. But like I said, the rhubarb's going to have pectin, so when this starts to cook down, that natural pectin is going to come out. So I'm just going to let this sit for maybe, I don't know, half hour or so. We'll come back and we'll see what it looks like. I do want to add that during this 30-minute waiting period, just for everything to kind of thaw and meld together, I do stir it like this a couple times, just to move like the sugar crystals around so that they dissolve a little bit. Whenever sugar is with water, I don't want to say like the friction of the water, but if you move it around, the sugar is going to dissolve quicker. And that's kind of what I want. I don't want to hear it sound like sand on the bottom. Like that. I don't want to hear that. So we're just going to give this a little bit more time. We'll come back. Okay, so we're back, and the strawberries, rhubarb, and sugar has been sitting for like 25 minutes. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like. There is going to be some foaming, some bubbling on top. That's perfectly normal, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, you see that? And then the other thing too is I kind of do this, and you can see in that path there's no granules of sugar. Oops, sorry. And then I don't hear the sandiness either any longer. So now at this point, I just need to turn the heat up onto a medium heat and get this to boil, and then that's when I add my lemon juice. The thing with these stainless steel kettles like this is there's kind of like a thin layer of glass in between a couple layers of metal. So you never want to ever really cook anything on a high heat. If you have to bring something to a boil for like 5 minutes, you have to slowly bring that temperature up, and then you slowly let the temperature cool down. Now also with these heavy bottom pots, if something comes to a boil and you don't want it to boil, even when you turn the heat down, it's going to still rapidly boil for quite a while because the heat is retained in the metal. So you just kind of have to learn the ins and outs of using the stainless steel kettles. I love them for canning season. I didn't always have them. I had to use like Teflon line kettles and stuff like that. But as I got older, slowly and surely, I just started to be able to afford a kettle here, a kettle there. Do they all match? No, not even close. So that's kind of the trick with stainless steel kettles. You never want to really bring everything up to high. Now, let's say if you're using an aluminum pot. Now, this is kind of like an aluminum water bath. So if you're using an aluminum kettle, the other thing is this layer of metal is very thin, and it doesn't take much for aluminum to heat up. So it's easier for you to burn things. So learn your kettles. It takes a little bit of practice. Always just kind of slowly bring your temperature up. Now I've made this jam recipe for quite a while. I know that recipe book looks new, but I've been making and canning things for a long time. I just kind of try different recipes, and as I find things that I like, I tag them and I keep reusing them. So I have this on medium heat, and I'm just going to let it come to a boil. Look at how nice that's looking. That's going to also soften up the rhubarb. And the weird thing with this recipe is once it comes up to a boil, I have to add the lemon juice, and then I have to bring it up to a rapid boil for 5 minutes, which means I have to increase my temperature, and then I have to let it sit for 24 hours. So when we get to that point, I will show you about adding the lemon juice, okay? The other thing I kind of wanted to mention too is it's a good idea to keep stirring this and stand over your pot. The reason is you can feel anything that might start sticking to the bottom. So like right now everything's moving along nice and smooth, but if it would stand still for any length of time, there's that possibility that something might start sticking to the bottom. When it starts sticking to the bottom, there's a chance that it might burn, and then that'll alter the flavor of your jam. In that case, you'll have to kind of taste your jam concoction. If you can taste the burnt flavor, it might be a loss. Like I said, I've been making jams and jellies for a long time. So I have some experience. I've had fails, plenty of fails. When I first started out canning, I think the first thing I canned on my own, not living at home, was tomato juice and spaghetti sauce. My mom has a really good spaghetti sauce recipe where it's easy to cut in half, it's easy to double, so on. It's like all like 6 cups this, 6 cups that, 6 cups that. It's really easy that way. And then I believe it was the following year I got my hands on some strawberries, and I canned my first batch of strawberry jam, and it was runny. And that's just because I rushed the process. Too excited, too impatient, and it cost me. But then after that, lessons are learned, because I said to my mom, I'm like, my jam didn't turn out, it's all runny. And then she's like, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? I'm like, yeah. She goes, that's why it's runny. I was like, oh. So I just learned to be more patient. Now this rhubarb is going to soften as it cooks and stands. I'll probably take like a potato masher, just, you know, just to get everything nice and soft. I like jam more so than jelly. And then the reason is I like the textures. Now, some people don't like seeds. Some people don't like having the pulp. Then you want to have jelly because jelly will strain out all that. But me, I like jam. I like the fibrous fruit. I don't know. That's just me. Some substance. So the other thing too, I'm just going to let this just for a few seconds here. I'm just going to show you my 2 ladles that I use during canning season. This is what I'll probably use for the strawberry jam just because it's a smaller amount. This one here is ideal for things like spaghetti sauce, hamburger, juice, like tomato juice. I'm trying to think if I'm canning like apple pie filling or something. It's cool because it can pour out this way. If you're left-handed or right-handed, it's got pores on each side. And this actually holds a half a pint of whatever you're cooking. So it's also kind of like another way to measure. And then this little thing here hangs on the edge of your kettle so it never like, whoop, like that. So I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so right now, my jam is starting to boil along the edges. I'll stop stirring. Can you see that? Like right here, it's starting to boil along the edges. Oh, now it's starting to boil in the middle. So this is a good time for me to add my lemon juice. And then we're gonna bring it up to a rapid boil for 5 minutes. So let me just set you here. So it says to use a 1/4 cup. So since I'm using jugged up lemon juice, there we go. I always kind of give it a shake in case there's any sediments. Because even though it's juice, there's still going to be sediments that settle in there. Give that a quick stir. Why do I feel like this cracked? Oh, hang on a second. Good gravy. That was hard to open. All right, so I'm just going to add my 1/4 cup lemon juice. I always pour over the kettle, that way if I dribble, it just goes in. And that'll simmer the boiling down just for a few seconds. And stir that in. Adding the lemon juice brings up the acidity level, which makes it fair game for water bath canning. You can water bath can anything that's acidic, like your basic jams and jellies. Anything with tomatoes, anything with vinegar that you're like pickled items, you can do water bath canning. But if you're gonna can something like hamburger or a turkey or soup, or maybe some beans or carrots, you would have to pressure can that because it's gotta come up to a higher temperature. So this is actually now kind of more so with a rolling boil. I'm gonna just show you this. See how that's changing? See how it's boiling in the middle? And it's kind of starting to foam up. And that's all right. So I'm gonna set my timer here for 5 minutes and we'll come back, okay? So I'm just gonna kind of show you, you can see with the rapid boil, it's kind of like bringing the volume up. So I really gotta keep stirring. Whenever I cook fruit without adding a pectin to it, you have to kind of do a hard boil for about, I don't want to say 90 minutes, but you really got to have it boiling for about 90 minutes to draw out the natural pectins. In fact, I'm going to lower this a little bit. I'm getting nervous. There we go. And that foam on the top that you see, that's all normal. And it's important that I stand here and do this so that it doesn't boil over. That stuff is so hard to get off of a stove. Don't want to go down that path again. And also too, by stirring it, it's less likely to splatter all over. I painted these here with like a glossier paint, so they're a little bit easier to wipe down. So I'll just kind of show you where I'm at with my rapid boil, or they call it a hard boil also. So you can kind of see what that looks like. I hardly feel like the chunks of rhubarb in here now either. It's really softening up. And those stalks, those weren't super huge, and I did cut them up kind of small to help with the cooking process. So that might be why I'm not noticing it as much either. So kind of smells good in here already. I love this time of year. I probably shouldn't have my face so close to this in case it splatters. I don't know. I must have bad habits that I just never realized until I think about them out loud. So anyway, we'll let you go and I will come back to this in a little bit for you, okay? When I'm cooking jam down, I always keep a little plate, you know, like a little teacup plate or saucer next to the stove, so if I need to set my spoon down, I can. But I decided to dig out my potato masher so that I can mash up my fruit. As I'm stirring, I kind of see large berries. You know what, I just want to get that in smaller chunks. So this is all I'm doing. I'm not really even feeling the rhubarb in here. Everything is pretty soft. As I'm doing this up and down motion, there's no resistance because of rhubarb chunks being more firm than the frozen strawberries that thawed out. The other thing too about freezing your extra fruits is say this year I had a bad strawberry crop. Say this year frost hit my berries and I didn't get many or any. I can always make a small batch of whatever's left over, or if I only get a small amount out there, I can backfill with whatever I have in the freezer. I do this especially with currants because some years it's a bust for the crop. I say crop and it's 2 bushes. So anyway, I just wanted to show you how I just dragged out the potato masher, and that's all I'm doing. Alrighty, my timer just went off. And the next step is to remove it from the heat, cover it, and let it stand for 24 hours. So I already turned the heat off. I want to get as much of this berry stuff off here as possible. Come on. There we go. Now I have the heat off, but I'm going to show you how it's still boiling, and that's just because of the type of kettle I'm using. See? And now you can see that it's starting to look like a true strawberry jam color. That nice, rich color. And see, it's still bubbling away as if I still have the heat on, and I don't. Now, all this foam, some people skim that off. I skim it off, and I'll put it on a plate, and I'll let it cool, and it's like a strawberry marshmallow. But if you can with that in your jam, that's not going to hurt you at all. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that part. So now, like I said, I shut the temperature off. I'm going to cover it and let it stand for 24 hours. So we'll see you tomorrow, okay? Have a good night. One other thing that I wanted to show you about the uniqueness of this kettle is that it has little holes in the lid to kind of ventilate some of the steam, and I'll show you what I mean. So I hope I get this in focus really good. I don't know if, can you see these little holes? So that's all it's gonna take, is just to have those few little holes there, just to release just a little bit of steam. Now, I do not need to put this in the refrigerator for the 24 hours. In fact, that would probably wreck the kettle, but the recipe just says to let it stand. So you just let it stand at room temperature. And I know some of you people might say, oh, what about bacteria growth? You're going to be bringing it up to a boil again, and that's going to cook any chance of any bacteria out, and then it's going to go into hot, sterile jars. So we'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll show you that whole process, okay? Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the final day of this specific batch of strawberry jam. I just turned on the water bath canner. You can see I have my rack in here, and I'm going to just load up some random jars. I don't really know exactly how much I'm going to get, but I know I want to get at least 2 half-pint jars, and then the rest can be all quarter-pint sizes. So I'm just going to kind of load those into the rack. Remember, the rack is just like this, and then I'll load it, and then I lower it down. And that's going to sterilize the jars. So I'm just going to kind of put them in like on their side so that the water goes inside the jars, so that that nice hot boiling water will get in there. Let's get some more. And here's the half-pint sizes. Maybe I'll grab one more of these. No, I'm gonna grab a 1/4 pint. Just put 2 1/4 pints in here because I really don't know what I'm gonna end up with. So then I'm just gonna lower this down. I'm gonna put my lid on here just to keep the steam all in here. Plus it'll heat it up faster. And once I get this boiling, I'm gonna go back to my strawberry jam and get that going. Now, if this is your first exposure to making strawberry jam, please know that not all recipes take the course of a couple days to do. It's just a specific recipe, and part of it has to do with me thawing out the berries. I showed you those steps. Yesterday was the initial cook down, and then you have to let it sit to let the pectins emerge. Normal recipes though, you just pick your berries, clean them, well, pick your berries, wash your berries, clean them, and mash them down with your sugar, and then you make your jam. It's actually a quick process, but since I chose this recipe just because it's a small batch, I have to go through these extra steps, which I really don't mind. The other thing I was going to talk about too is strawberries are often considered something they call the dirty dozen. The last time I looked, the dirty dozen list was actually more than 12, but a dirty dozen is fruits and vegetables that are the most likely to be exposed to pesticides. And with strawberries, you know, they have all those little external seeds, we'll call them, so the pesticides can even get in around there. So when I wash my berries, I will put them into some cold water with a splash of vinegar. Oh yeah, I was going to put vinegar in to keep my jars sparkly. That's all it is. And I'll wash them with cold water and some vinegar, and I'll just let them sit in that cold water for about 5 minutes, and then I'll rinse them. You'll be surprised at how much dirt comes off of them. And now you have to remember too, my strawberries, they're not in a field. They're not really exposed to sprays because I don't really spray my yard. But there could be some spray carryover from the fields in the area. So it's always a good idea to wash your berries. And I just wanted to share that with you. So when this gets boiling, we'll go to the next step about getting the boiling on the jam, and then it's going to be pretty much real quick. Alrighty, you can see the steam coming from the edges of the lid on the water bath canner, which is this. When you lift your lid, you always lift it away. So I'm going to do this because I don't want to give myself a steam burn. And there you can see the water is bubbling away and the jars are in there getting sanitized. So I'm just going to keep the lid on this, and I'm going to turn on my heat on my strawberry jam, and we're going to start cooking this. All right, you can see that the jam has got a nice boil going, and I'm going to have to set my timer now for 5 minutes, and I want to keep stirring this so that it doesn't burn on the bottom. All right, we'll come back in a little bit. All right, we're almost done at the 5-minute mark. I can already tell that this is thickening up a little bit. A nice part of this step here is that the boiling, you see all the steam coming off, that's getting rid of some of the moisture, and that's going to help your jam gel. The other thing I think I forgot to mention before with the jars, I did wash those this morning after breakfast, but I still like to sanitize them because I kind of think of it like a food packing plant. Whoop, that's 5 minutes. You know, that you want everything as sterile and sanitized as possible. So I'm going to turn this heat off. I did put a little saucer in the freezer, and I'm going to show you how I figure out if my jam is going to set, okay? Be right back. All right, I just took this out of the freezer, and what I usually do is just put a little dribble on the dish. I'm going to go put it back in the freezer for a little bit. All it is this. And I'm just going to keep working around the plate until I get the right level of gel. Kind of like moving around a clock. Be right back. All right, so it's just been a little while. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my finger through the middle, and I should see a path if this is ready to jar up. I do. So this jam is ready to jar up. So I'm going to get my jars out of the water. We'll go from there. All right, it's time to start jarring things up. So as you can kind of see here, let me get this out of the way. I have a little bit of a washcloth because I don't have a whole lot of jars on the counter. So I have my hot jars on that washcloth, and I got my funnel in place. So now I'm just going to start ladling the jam into the jars like this. And you're going to want to leave some headspace, which is a gap between the level of the jam to the, I guess you call it the roof of the jar, the top of the jar. I believe for this I'm going to need to have at least a ½ inch of headspace. This handle is in my way. Now everything is really, really hot, so of course you don't want to touch anything directly with your fingers. Just going to put a little dab more in here. I think maybe you'll see it better when I'm doing it closer up. Remember, this method is called hot pack because we're putting hot jam into hot jars into hot water. A little bit more. I'm just going to go ahead and finish filling my jars, and I'll show you what I end up with then, okay? See you in a bit. Alrighty, this is what I ended up with my batch. You can see the pot is pretty empty. I'll probably scrape that out and just put it in the fridge for myself for a treat. When I was talking about headspace, I'm talking about the level from here to here. So I've got a nice headspace on here. And then you can also see that I've got the rims kind of slopped up. So I'm going to use some vinegar and a paper towel. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this one-handed. I know I'm not. Well, yeah, maybe I will. And I'm just going to kind of wipe the edges like this. You want to get any of that extra sticky jam. You just see there's just that little tint of pink there. You want to get that extra sticky jam off of the rim so that your lid is going to seal nice. And then I'm just going to kind of change this around. So then that should be good. Let me see. I couldn't tell if that was on the inside or on the outside. Ooh. Ooh. What do I got going on here? All right. And then now we're going to just put the lids on, and I'll show you that here real quick. So I got my lids right here. Set that down. So I only need one small lid, like this. I'm gonna get my finger in there, there. And then I need the two larger lids on the bottom. Oh, I got a bonus lid here, so let's get this here. Now there's nothing wrong with these getting wet, because I can always reuse them. There we go. And then I'm just going to add the rings, and I got to set the camera down for that. All right, so now all I'm going to do is add the rings. So I only have one small jar. Now this is going to be pretty hot, but I can hold it just long enough. And you want to just put them finger tight. You don't want to crank it on there, because that can cause your lid to buckle and not seal properly. So here again, ow, that was hot. Whew. I'm sure it's because it's a larger volume. And then this one here. Like this. There. Now I'm just going to move these into the water bath, and then they go in the water bath canner for 10 minutes. All right, I'm going to be using my little jar grabber because that's hot, and I'm going into hot water. So I'm just going to put that here. Grab another one. That there. Ideally, you don't want your jars to tip, and sometimes you can't help that once they go in the water bath canner because the rolling boil might make them move around. So now I gotta set my camera down. Well, maybe I can take you here for a ride. Let me see if I can do this. Hang on. There. All right. So I'm gonna go and get the lid for the kettle, and I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes, and we'll come back. My timer just went off, so this is done. So I can shut the heat off, shut the timer off, and then, remember, open this away from your face, Look at all that steam. That would really give you a bad burn. All right. And then I'm just going to take these out and put them on this counter here. It's kind of lined with a towel. I'll show you what I'm going to do. We might even hear them pop, which means that they have sealed. Let's see. The important thing is once they're out of the water bath canner, you want to let them cool for at least 12 hours before you start handling them. All right. So let's see, I'm going to just cover this again. So I don't want all that steam in the house. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to show you what we got here. So this is my, did you hear that? That one's sealed. So right here, this is my leftover Daba jam. I'm just going to put that in the fridge and I'll use that. And then, oh, there's another one. That one's sealed. So we're just waiting for this little one to seal. So these are going to be shelf stable for at least 18 months to 2 years. As long as they're sealed, they're going to be fine. And of course, I always try to use my older stuff first and then, you know, save the newer stuff. Kind of like rotating your things in the cupboard. You want to eat the stuff that's about to expire before you use the stuff that you just bought. Otherwise, you're wasting money. So I hope you found this video informative. Please like, share, follow, subscribe, tell all your friends. We'll see you in the next video.